Who's the best space dog? Oh, где моя хорошая, хорошенькая моя, ты просто космическая. Eh? Who's the best hairy cosmonaut? It is indeed a lovely sunset, and it reminds me of the skies of Peru. I didn't? I never told you about the wonderful Sky City? Well, it was an extraordinary place, but one filled with dangers. Well, it might have been simple for you to cross it, but you were in a space capsule. I had to rely on my own 2 feet, my noshki. Feet which, I might add, had just crossed the interior, beaten the villain Toll, and helped inspire the Myank to a workers' revolution. Oh, that's all very easy for you to say, but your idea of civilized behavior is licking your own bottom in public. No. My adventures above the clouds were filled with untold dangers, death-defying escapes, and some really quite extraordinarily large bielaribica. And it happened like this. What a handsome devil! Пускать пыль в глаза is not my intention, but I do cut a dashing figure in my interior astro suit costume thingy. The drill device, codenamed Mother Calliope, was a testament to the brilliance of the Baikonur engineers. It now spends its days as a nesting roost for the pterodactyls of Plutonia. Всегда пожалуйста, товарищи. The Little Orpheus was a cramped and smelly affair on the inside, despite its remarkable exterior. And there was a definite smell of dog. They assured me it was specially constructed for a cosmonaut, but I remained skeptical. It definitely smelled of dog. The size of the Tyrannosaurus Rex was apparently a matter of debate amongst scholars of prehistory for many years. Now, having said that, the one I actually met was much, much bigger than this scrawny specimen. I felt like a small boy wandering amongst a magical forest, expecting a Lieshi to leap out at any moment and tickle me most horribly. The furious beast almost looks friendly here, like a common house pet, like a dog or koshka. I can assure you that in person they are definitely not domesticated creatures. I must say, I liked the mustache. I'm disappointed I was made to shave it off before my descent. Rocketry is a dangerous business, you know. But how to best capture the sheer power, the terrible and wondrous force required to blast a drill through miles of solid rock to the center of the Earth? Plutonia really was a remarkable place. Quite unlike the small vegetable patch at the bottom of Uncle Sasha's garden in Shebalinua. I suspect his Reditsky were not carnivorous either. Now me, I am a simple man. I only require that a switch may be turned on or off. But those clever Agarthans, they made switches that turned themselves off after a time. Oh, what an extraordinary labor-saving stroke of brilliance! Auntie Masha's travels once took her to Chatura, where she was trapped in a cable car suspended over the Oscilia of River Kvirilia for 6 hours with a hairy manganese entrepreneur. It led to a brief but passionate affair, according to her wonderful diaries. But are you sure? I said. It really does smell extremely doggy. And the seat is disagreeably small and cramped. And this aperture on the dashboard near the signal control button is, well, bone-shaped. Nonsense, they cried. What kind of fiend would send a man to the center of the Earth in a capsule designed for a suitcase-sized dog? My Uncle Arlian was legendarily grumpy. When neighbors came to his door to discuss the weather, he would stick his head out of the toilet window above it and bellow at them to leave. The gates to Agartha reminded me of this bizarre custom of his. They were a clever bunch, those Agarthans. A tragedy that I only saw a fraction of their grand plans before the city was destroyed. In retrospect, I do wish the central power source of Agartha had been a cube rather than a globe. It would be far easier to run from a cube, as they don't tend to roll as well. A civilization may be best judged by the scale and diversity of its doors. So opines a criminally unknown philosopher Pridurkin. Did I mention the parts of Agartha where strange purple mists seeped from the floor? I didn't? A terrible omission! Прошу прощения! A keen observer may have noticed a striking similarity between the ancient Agarthan statues and the Mienkf. Perhaps the general was foolish to write them off as savages. A deeper relationship between the two was clearly there to be discovered. Cousin Pavel once claimed to have met a Mienkf whilst looking for mushrooms in Aktau. Oh, of course he was lying. They all lived underground. I found them to be a truly gentle and civilized people, not the hairy brutes of myth. I feel I must put your suspicions at rest and make it absolutely clear that despite the uncanny similarities, I have never read or seen the dreadful capitalist propaganda about a nasally over-endowed puppet with a predisposition for falsehoods and his adventures. In retrospect, I often wonder if I was overly harsh on the worms. They were simply doing as their nature intended, which was to be disgusting, parasitic monsters driven to consume and excrete with wild abandon. I, too, once labored under the misunderstanding that whales were agromny ribi, giant fish. Imagine my wonder and surprise to discover they are indeed mammals like us. I have explained this common error to every fishmonger in Jorsali. No need to thank me, it's simply my duty. Ah, the smaller worms. If you were to meet one under kinder circumstances, you'd be forgiven for thinking they were adorable little creatures. Then you'd see the teeth and realize they are in fact nightmarish monsters. It is little wonder the worms were so angry, given they were covered with pus-oozing buboes and spots. My nephew Sergei was similarly afflicted between the ages of 12 and 48. A tragic outcome for the little chap, Bidyaga. Some may describe me as a born storyteller, a прирожденный рассказчик, a raconteur of remarkable range, power, and ability, an intimidatingly lovable hero, but my own modesty must protest such complimenty. No, I am a simple man, a humble man. Ask anyone, they all agree. I don't recall ever seeing another whale, but I have heard they are sociable creatures. Perhaps the sheer size of the brute made the others keep their distance. I do wonder what the view from the eye might have been like otherwise. I suspect, had he not perished in a terrible goring accident, that Uncle Vanya would have been extremely jealous of my opportunity to explore the oral landscape of a giant cetacean. The stomach acid of a whale, according to Lyuba, could strip the skin of a man in seconds. Luckily, I was deft enough to avoid coming into contact with it. I do wish, however, I had kept some with me. It would have been useful for unblocking the drains of my house. I am a martyr for blockages. Toll, that maniacal maniac, that dreadful villain. A Rasputin in rags and tatters. Once a great hero, now a poor mad tyrant. But how to best describe him to you? Now, Uncle Arlen built a troika for the well-to-do of the region and was something of a bore when it came to transport. I do wish, however, I had listened more to his dreadful fireside monologues, as it would have been useful for my travails beneath Sanikov land. I have no idea what Uncle Arlen would have made of Toll's sled. It reminded me somewhat of Ded Moroz, although clearly missing the tree. It made me wonder if Sanikov land was directly underneath Veliki Ustchuk. Wouldn't that be a thing? I have never seen such magnificent-looking creatures, each of them bathed in the colors of a rainbow. Even Aunt Agrafina's abnormally large Sibirskaya koshka paled into insignificance, and he once ate an entire goose in one sitting. Given the meager resources available to them, the Miank had to improvise shelters as best they could to protect themselves from the icy wastelands. Thankfully, they didn't seem to feel the cold as we do. Thicker skin, I believe. How Sanikov land ended up beyond the Earth's crust remains a mystery. But the fact it and Toll were miles underground explains why the Satko and others could never find it. Now it is fashionable to claim it melted. Melted? What a preposterous idea. Who ever heard of a whole island melting? My father once met Obruchev in Kazatskaya Banya. He said he was a quite brilliant and charming man with an extraordinarily hairy back. Despite this distraction, my father listened in awe as Obruchev told marvelous tales of his expeditions and discoveries, until it was nearly time for supper and they were both boiled quite pink. I know I shouldn't have, but I just couldn't resist reaching out and touching the glowing delights. Imagine my surprise when instead of a painful sting, the jellyfish had the exact texture of Auntie Marsha's muravennik. It seemed the Kraken must have been pulling ships to their doom for hundreds of years. An entire Spanish galleon. Or so it seemed. In later life, the general retired from the army and dedicated himself to beekeeping, eventually amassing a small herd of just over 2 billion Carpathian bees, a record for Bashkiria. At least, that is what I am led to believe. I must admit, at first, I thought I had discovered Kitish, or even Atlantis itself. But no, that is entirely another story. I owe my life to that strange diving helmet. Who knows, in other worlds, what magnificent variations of it might exist? On the seafloor, all kinds of wondrous devices could be found, such as the buoys spilled from the hulks of sunk warships, whose light had such a dramatic effect upon the electrical, oceanic flora and fauna. An electrical kraken may sound horrendous, but legend has it that such beasts were tender lovers, whose dedication to their partners lasted for centuries or more. The lost city of Lemuria emerging from the sandstorm is a sight I will never forget. I visited the Manikum Desert whilst stationed at Cosmodrome Baikonur, mainly to escape the dreadful tedium of mopping the floors and emptying the bins. I never did find a good reason why that formed such a large part of my cosmonaut training. The Lemurian prophecy of Toll's rise and the coming of the man from above. Some might say that's a triumph of socialism over impossible odds, is as inevitable and ancient as the world itself. I do remember the general remarking that many of my descriptions of the fabulous architectures of the interior resembled famous Soviet landmarks. What can I say to this? Except it is perhaps to be expected that the wonders of our internationalist project are timeless indeed. On family holidays to Yagri Islands, and when he was safe to be allowed out in public, Cousin Pavel would frequently astound us with his enormous sandcastles. One was even large enough to house a small family, although often the family in question protested quite strongly about it. I have made many furtive scribblings in my secret notebook since my return, trying to make sense of my adventures. Perhaps the most enigmatic page is simply entitled Tower and Lever. Whatever can it all mean? Had Toll not been so utterly demented, his genius and flair for invention and engineering would have made him a powerful asset to Kosmicheskaya Programa SSSR. Unfortunate, then, that his isolation had rendered him a gibbering loon. As a child, my toy-maker parents gifted me with a small flute and drum that became my closest friends during the lonely hours of my childhood. Maya malinkaya fleta I baraban. I noted that if you placed sand on the drum skin and played the flute nearby, the grains would shift and move. Perhaps the same principle lay at the heart of those wonderful musical crystals of Lemuria. Laika was more than my savior. In the months following Toll's overthrow and the Mienkv Revolution, she became my constant friend and companion. And as for her adventures beneath the earth, extraordinary. But that is perhaps a story for another day. Of course, the axis mundi is not always a clock. Some people think of it as a pillar or a tree, a ladder or even a lighthouse. Some even think of it as the navel of the world. How strange. My navel, on the other hand, is full of fluff, although excavating it is sometimes an adventure in itself. The planet of time. Rivers of infinity, lakes of lastingness, great plains of epochs and eras stretching as far as the eye could see. As the son of a humble Chasavchik, it touched me deeply. I love to tinker and build. I once made a fully operational shaving machine for face and body from the parts of an old Moskvich. But it was nothing to the magical crystal-powered rocket ship that Toll constructed. A waterfall of time is as sweet as opportunity-filled Varniki. I believe that was Pridurkin once again. What a mind! Did you know that Laika was not a thoroughbred, but a scrappy little mongrel from Moscow's alleyways? A bradyaga! Space was not conquered by a great military expedition, but a brave stray with an appetite for adventure. Meeting her was the proudest moment of my journey. The general and I corresponded for some years before he retired. He would tell me about his bees, and I tell him stories of my adventure that there wasn't time to cover when I first returned. I never did find out if he really believed my story, but he asked after Laika in every letter, and she was always very excited when I read them aloud to her. I am no glory hunter, but I do hope that when they write the history books, one day I will take my place alongside comrades Gagarin, Tsitsov, and Tereshkova. I went down, whereas they went up. But perhaps my mission was the most heroic of them all, if you consider it deeply. Of course, 3 years is a long time to remember, and it was a long and complicated story, as I explained to the general. I find myself still sketching down parts of my journey to keep them in order. Perhaps one day I will be able to share these sketches with the world. Aunt Agrafina might have been brilliant, but her timekeeping was absolutely dreadful. We joked that she'd even be late for her own funeral. A joke that proved both ironic and tragic, as it turned out. I know a great deal about cloaks as a result of my upbringing. You would, I suspect, be hard-pushed to find a cosmonaut able to explain their intricacies to an audience. I have sent several letters to the Moscow University Horology Society suggesting a series of lectures.